in a world where the number of movies available is great, but many are so bad, you'll learn a new definition of hate. One man sifts and reviews through the movie sludge. One man will be the movie cop, jury, and judge. He goes by many names, but you know him by MoviesMerica.
Hey, all you beautiful movie-loving people out there, live from a red carpet somewhere, surrounded by celebrities. This is the MoviesMerica podcast with Van Ebert, where movie reviews meet cold brews. Van will review your favorite and maybe not so favorite movies while enjoying some ice-cold beers and saying cheers. Now let's head into the theater and join our illustrious movie reviewer du jour, who's no doubt got the beer ready to pour, Van Ebert. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to MoviesMerica podcast. I hope you'll enjoy this review of No Time to Die tonight. I'm your humble movie reviewer, Ebert. Van Ebert. And this is my terrible attempt at trying to sound like an MI6 super suave secret agent, when really I sound like this. All right, enough of that for now. I'm Van Ebert, your humble host again for MoviesMerica podcast. Thank you very much for joining us as we review No Time to Die. You know, as I was doing that accent, listening to it, I can understand like why a lot of the ladies do get rather turned on, with the British accent. Good evening, madam. I need 2 olives in my martini. Would you care to join me? You know, as opposed to, "Hi, Wilbur, let's go get yourself some corn nuts over there from the convenience store." You know, a little bit of contrast in between those two accents. Just a little bit. So, all apologies to my friends with very heavy Southern accents. Allow me to salvage the situation here. But hey, you guys didn't, listen in here to hear a diatribe of mine about British accents versus Southern accents. You reported here for duty to listen to a movie review of No Time to Die.
The past isn't dead.
James, fate draws us back together. Now your enemy is my enemy.
His name is Safin.
And what does he want?
Revenge. Me.
When her secret finds its way out, it'll be the death of you.
You can imagine why I've come back to play.
There's a young lady in Santiago I want you to meet.
You're late.
When you're ready. Salute.
I met your new 00. She's a disarming young woman.
I get why you shot him.
Yeah, well, everyone tries at least once.
Well, if that trailer didn't hype you up to go see this movie, I don't know what will here. But, hey, just wanted to mention that this podcast, as you may very well know already, depending on where you're listening to this off of, it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, a lot of the other podcasts, usual suspects, so where you can find those there. I'm also on MoviesMerica.com with these podcasts, and also reach out to me on Twitter and Instagram under MoviesMerica there if you'd like to reach out to me, drop any comments, post anything to me on Twitter and Instagram. I always love to hear from everyone. And if you need any kind of movie therapy after you go out to a theater or watch something on streaming or TV that is just absolutely atrocious, and you're just looking, for some therapeutic healing, feel free to, post something and ask, for some therapy here, because believe me, I know what it is to see some terrible movies, or if you see a great movie, if you see a fantastic movie and you want to endorse it, maybe I haven't seen it. I doubt it, but maybe I haven't seen it. Let me know. So, long story short, reach out to me on Twitter and Instagram on there, okay? All right. And as you know, if you've listened to any of my podcasts before, I do chug a beer or drink a beer, imbibe a beer. I don't really chug it. I'm way past that age to be chugging beers. I like to enjoy my beer. And so tonight's beer will be Dos Equis. I know, not very exotic, but Dos Equis. It's one of my go-to beers that I will be wetting my whistle with tonight. Now, some of you might be saying, hey, since you're reviewing a Bond film, shouldn't you be drinking Heineken? I just can't stand Heineken. And I was too lazy to make a martini shaken but not stirred. So that's what's behind this at this time. So also on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, if you see fit, feel free to get on there and give me a 5-star rating. It would be much appreciated. That'd be great. If you want to comment, give me some advice, whatnot, feel free to do that very thing, okay? All right, well, let's get into this here. No Time to Die, which is the latest Bond movie, of course. And we have waited a while for this, okay? So this is one of the first movies that was a victim of the pandemic. And as you know, there were several movies that have been delayed by the pandemic. And unfortunately, Commander Bond was no exception to the rule. I think this movie, I can't remember, sometime in 2019 is when it's supposed to come out, maybe like the holiday season in 2019 or probably 2020 because, yeah, holiday season 2019, we didn't really have the pandemic yet. So sometime in 2020 is when it's supposed to come out, and it got delayed right here. And then, of course, ever since then, they keep coming out, it's like, oh, yeah, it's going to be out in summer of 2020. Wrong. We got to delay it again. And then they said November of 2020. Nope, not available in November 2020 again. And then I think they said, was it March of 2021, something like that? No, wrong. Nope, not going to. I mean, you see where I'm going with this? I mean, we've waited a long time for No Time to Die. And so I was very, very excited to see this movie here. I mean, Daniel Craig has done a great job as Bond. I was not one of the ones that, right before Casino Royale came out in 2006, I wasn't one of the ones like, oh my God, how can you have Daniel Craig as James Bond? He's got blonde hair and blue eyes. That's not James Bond. I was not one of those freaking out about that. I was like, okay, this guy, let's give him a chance. He might be a good Bond. I never dreamt that it would have turned out as good as it did. Up until then, the only thing I knew Daniel Craig for was Road to Perdition, a Tom Hanks movie where he played like the slimy bad guy in that, or one of the bad guys in that movie. And I was like, that guy? And this is before so there's a movie called Layer Cake. Let me implore you, okay, I know this is a review for No Time to Die, but if you haven't seen the movie Layer Cake, directed by Matthew Vaughn, the same guy who did Kick-Ass and is doing the Kingsman movies, Layer Cake, gotta watch it. It's a great movie. It's the movie, I have no doubt, that got Daniel Craig the part of James Bond, because he plays like a suave, sophisticated drug dealer, actually, in that movie, not a suave, sophisticated MI6 agent, but he plays a suave, debonair character in Layer Cake. But I hadn't seen that before I saw Casino Royale, so I wasn't sure what to expect. And then Casino Royale came out. Woo! Wow! I saw it at the theaters, because I'm of the mind you got to see James Bond movies at the theater. I mean, you can't watch it on your phone. Come on, you can't watch it on your Apple Watch. You gotta watch James Bond for all the epic, sweeping action scenes, in a movie theater. Come on, and the sweeping, soundtrack. You gotta watch it in the theater. So I saw it in the theater, and I knew something was up with Casino Royale right when I first saw it. It opens up in black and white, and it comes up with this kind of this very sophisticated, very slick, very avant-garde scene where they introduced Bond, getting his first 3 kills, I think it was, or first couple kills to become a 00. And then just that scene after that when he's in Madagascar and he's got the big chase scene where where the guy's doing all the parkour moves. I was like, I'd never seen a James Bond action sequence like that ever before in any James Bond movie. Definitely in no Roger Moore James Bond movie, But I was like, oh my God, this is beyond my wildest dreams. So that was my first impression of Daniel Craig as Bond. So enough about Casino Royale. You're here to hear about No Time to Die. And so Daniel Craig has not disappointed us ever since then. Quantum of Solace and Spectre, they were not the highlights of Daniel Craig's James Bond tenure. It's worked out where every other Daniel Craig James Bond movie has been truly, truly excellent. Casino Royale, Skyfall, and I'm happy to say that No Time to Die does keep up that trend of every other James Bond movie being a good movie here. So it's not as good as Skyfall and Casino Royale, in my opinion. Casino Royale will always be the best Daniel Craig Bond movie, but it's up there. It's a different take on Bond too. As you watch it, you're gonna realize, and I still have. I like the movie, but I still have kind of mixed feelings on what they did with the dialogue with the movie. Now, with all the James Bond movies of Daniel Craig up to this point, he's always been kind of more stoic and the hard-nosed, bristled, quieter type. I mean, he's never been like a quiet introvert, shy. He's definitely never been that. But he's just been like the strong, silent, or not so silent, but, just very stoic and very reserved and never has to say more than he needs to. Just very cool, right? Just very, very cool. And in this one, they try to make him more animated when he's talking. And so one of the quote unquote controversies of this about this movie here before it even came out was that they added Phoebe Waller-Bridge as a screenwriter. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge, if none of you recognize the name, is the star of a Amazon Prime series, I believe it is, called Fleabag. Now, I haven't seen even 1 minute of Fleabag, but I guess for some reason, her being added as a screenwriter was controversial. And you can tell definitely if you really sit down and think about it when you're listening to this or when you're watching the movie, you can kind of tell where her contributions fit in. And it's almost like with me, like Bond, I liked the stoic Bond in the first few movies better than I like in totality, how he carries himself in this movie. I'll give you an example, okay? So one of my favorite action movies of all time is Lethal Weapon, right? Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, Lethal Weapon. So the very first Lethal Weapon was it was more of a serious tone, kind of a darker tone to it. There were some hints of humor in it, but it was a more morose tone. And then as the Lethal Weapon movies progressed, or in the way I think of it, they kind of regressed. They tried to make them all, hey, funny, all right, hey, and it worked mostly in Lethal Weapon 2 with Joe Pesci's character, and it was kind of fun. But then they just started overdoing it in Lethal Weapon 3 and Lethal Weapon 4. Point is, they do this same thing in No Time to Die. They try to make James Bond kind of more jokey and lighter on his feet and just, quippy and it's a shock to the senses because you remember how he was in the first four, I think it was four, right? First four movies. First four movies that he's been in. And then you contrast with this one, And some of it works. He's got some funny lines in this movie, but some of them just come off as just trying too hard. So that's what Phoebe Waller-Bridge's contribution is to it, because the rest of the writers, like Neil Purvis, Robert Wade, they've been with the James Bond franchise since GoldenEye or Die Another Day. I think Die Another Day was the first movies with Neil Purvis and Robert Wade. I think it is. Anyway. And so Phoebe Waller-Bridge, that's her contribution. And so it may not affect, everybody. I mean, some people might love it. Some people might hate it. Some people might be like me, where I'm just kind of right in between. And I've only seen the movie once. Maybe if I see it on, second, third time, maybe on subsequent viewings, I'll like it more. But that was one thing that stood out to me a lot, is just James Bond's very quippy. I don't know. He's Jerry Seinfeld. It's not quite that bad, but like Jerry Seinfeld was an MI6 agent. He's kind of more Jerry Seinfeld than he is James Bond. But anyway, I do like Daniel Craig still as James Bond in this movie. And this movie, it gives you the action sequences that you expect. Not one action sequence really blew my mind, though, like that Madagascar chase scene in Casino Royale, or the Miami airport scene, in Casino Royale. I mean, those were just blow your mind scenes that you just hadn't seen in any James Bond movie, and they were impressive even outside of the James Bond world, as far as just kick ass in your face, just go as hard as you can action scenes, just no holds barred, right in the gut, action scenes. And I can't really recall in No Time to Die any scenes that really affected me that way. Maybe it's just I'm so used to seeing them, this being the fifth movie that we've seen with these kind of action scenes with Daniel Craig. I mean, like the ending of Skyfall, where they got that big standoff at Skyfall, his childhood home. That was a cool sequence, but I don't really think that there was just a mind blowing, just oh my god, my eyes popping out of my head action sequence in this movie. Anyway, but it does have a very deep emotional core to this movie. It calls back to Casino Royale. It brings up Vesper from that movie. It ties a lot of stuff together. You've got his relationship with Madeline Swan from Spectre, who was the daughter of Mr. White, and that there's a character plot line with that. And, that does have some depth to it in this movie that it definitely didn't have in Spectre. All right, time to get a tug off this Dos Equis here. Okay. So, as you have no doubt heard, or maybe you haven't, so this is Daniel Craig's last James Bond movie. And it really gets addressed at the end of this movie. I'll just put it that way. But for me, it was bittersweet watching this movie, knowing that it was his last movie as James Bond. I mean, I look forward to seeing who they're going to get as the next James Bond, because they no doubt will find somebody else. I don't know if it's going to be Idris Elba. That would be a cool Bond. Our first black James Bond. That's cool. Or Henry Cavill. Superman. Right? Get him. He fits more the Ian Fleming definition or characterization or look of James Bond. White, dark-haired, British secret agent. Idris Elba would be a nice departure from that because I've always liked Idris Elba. I mean, the guy's British anyway, as well, so that would help. So, and he's just known as being a very suave, playing some very suave actors, or suave characters in his movies. Anyway, but this is Daniel Craig's time, and so it was bittersweet seeing that this is Daniel Craig's last movie. Now, the villain. Every Bond movie has to have a villain, right? And there's been a couple of good villains in the Daniel Craig movies. To me, Lyutsifer from Casino Royale, played by the great Mads Mikkelsen. He's been the top Daniel Craig villain that I've ever seen. And then also Silva, played by the great Javier Bardem in Skyfall. He was pretty good as well. Dominic Green and Quantum of Solace didn't really do anything for me. Surprisingly enough, Christoph Waltz as Blofeld in Spectre did nothing for me. I mean, what a waste in that movie. Like Christoph Waltz. I mean, Hans Landa, from Inglourious Bastards. Come on. I really wish they would have done a better job with him as a bad guy in Spectre. But anyway, but Christoph Waltz is back in this movie as Blofeld as well. So you've got him as kind of a side villain. But the main villain in this movie is Rami Malek. And he plays a villain, I believe, named Safin. And Rami Malek, you may know him. The first time I saw Rami Malek was in the HBO miniseries about World War II in the Pacific Theater of World War II called The Pacific. And he was also in Mr. Robot. And he's been, obviously, I think probably most famously to most people, he played Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. Did such a good job in that movie, he won Best Actor, right? So Rami Malek is a very good actor, but I just feel in this movie, he was just wasted. I think that the writers just got lazy with him in this movie. He's got the, there was nothing fascinating or intriguing or menacing really about his character. Nothing that put really any kind of fear in you or dread that made you feel like there was really, I mean, obviously there was something at stake. I mean, this plot is a, worldwide, endangering plot, but it just his lines, the way he delivered them, I just wasn't impressed with him as a villain, which is another waste because Rami Malek, like I said, he's a Oscar-winning actor, but the movie is good in spite of him not being a very memorable villain in this. But there's plenty of other good things in the movie, plenty of other good characters. Example would be Ana de Armas. She has a way too short stint in this movie. As I think her character's name was Paloma. I could be butchering that name, but she is somewhat of a rookie, or she portrays herself as a rookie Cuban agent that helps out James Bond in Jamaica, I believe it is. And she kicks ass. She holds her own. I mean, she's kind of like Angelina Jolie in Salt, or just name your kick-ass female super agent, action hero, and she's right there up with it. And so she is in the movie all too briefly. She's very good in it. Q is also makes an appearance in this movie as well. He's quirky and adds some humor to the movies, a good comic relief right here. Also Moneypenny in this movie. She's the actress that plays her, Naomi Harris. I almost forgot her name. Naomi Harris plays Moneypenny in this movie. She does a good job. Ray Fiennes as M. Ray Fiennes, again, another acclaimed actor, does a good, headstrong, the pillar of stability, right? He's M. He's the minister of MI6. And him and Daniel Craig have several good scenes in this movie together. But so this movie here, just to kind of give you the plot here, or it's kind of the beginnings of the plot. I'm not going to explain the whole plot to you here. You got better things to do, right? But the beginning of the plot just starts off right off at the end, or a little bit after the end of Spectre, where Blofeld has been captured. James Bond decides not to kill him and has him in prison instead. He runs off with Madeline Swan. They're enjoying living and living life with each other in Italy. Italy? I think I over-enunciated that. In Italy. At the beginning of this movie, in this beautiful town, I think it's Madeira is the name of the town in Italy. It's just fantastic, just gorgeous in this movie. I mean, that's the thing about all James Bond movies, right? They always have like just fantastic, great, just these great locations with this great scenery, and the beginning of this movie is no exception there. And so, as you'd imagine in a James Bond movie, they portray it like all is well. They're going to live this happy life together, but not all is well, and something's about to go down. And so they're living together in this town, and he goes to visit Vesper's grave, burial site. Of course, Vesper was Ava Green in Casino Royale, Vesper Lynn, who died at the end of Vesper in Casino Royale. Goes to visit it there, and that's when all hell breaks loose. Okay, and then then the movie progresses from there, and he's brought in. He's asked by Felix Leiter, played by Jeffrey Wright, who also does a great job in this movie, to help him capture a scientist, and it snowballs from there. So and in order to do that, James Bond has to come out of retirement. I mean, that's one thing I'll say about Daniel Craig as James Bond. He retires more than your average heavyweight boxer. Retire, come back. Retire, come back. Retire, come back. So that's what he does in this movie. But you're glad that he did. But and I like how some of the old touches that they brought in this movie here too. Now Q, like I said, he was as in most James Bond movies, if not all, he's in this movie, and he gives more gadgets in this movie than most Daniel Craig James Bond movies. Most Daniel Craig James Bond movies have been gadget free. They want to make it a little bit more earthy, a little bit more down to earth. And in this movie, they go all out. I mean, they with the gadgets, or more all out with the gadgets than you've seen in other Daniel Craig movies. I like the fact that they bring back the Aston Martin DB5 in this movie there that you first saw way back in Goldfinger with Sean Connery. And also, I mean, it's even got miniguns in the headlights, as I'm sure you've seen from the trailers. So that was a nice touch. He's got a watch that, has, a cool secret agent utility to it. Does little, has tricks to it, so to speak. It's a cool gadget. And so that was kind of cool to see some gadgetry in Daniel Craig's last run as James Bond. So I think you'll enjoy this movie, especially since we've waited so long for our latest trip around the world with Daniel Craig as James Bond in No Time to Die. But check it out. I mean, it's definitely see it in the theater. Don't watch it I think it's only available in the theaters. Like I think this is one of the rare. Well, this isn't a Warner Brothers movie. If it was a Warner Brothers movie, it would be on HBO Max. Okay, but thankfully this is MGM, and they don't disrespect their franchises. They have James Bond only in the theater. That's where you should see it. If you need to, mask up. If you're apprehensive about going to the movies, going to a movie theater, do that. But gotta see it in the theater there. And if you have an IMAX theater, you should definitely see it there as well. Also, I need to give a shout out to Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer is his first James Bond movie where he's done the soundtrack. Hans Zimmer is mostly, I shouldn't say mostly. He's known for a number of movies that you've been, seen: Gladiator, Crimson Tide, Rain Man, all the Dark Knight movies. He did the Superman movies. He's about to do the Dune soundtrack coming up here. Shout out to Hans Zimmer. It was good to see a Hans Zimmer soundtrack to a James Bond movie. That was a special treat for a movie nerd like myself. Most people that go to the movies really don't care, but Hans Zimmer is a hero of mine as far as movie soundtracks go. But anyway, well, with that, there goes check out this movie. Again, please reach out to me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, say hello. I'd love to hear from you. Also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. Please feel free to give me a 5-star rating on that, or post something, let me know if you like this podcast or not. And with that, cheerio and enjoy your evening. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Hey guys, don't leave the video quite yet. Okay, I've got a popo. They're coming after me, and I don't have much time to tell you, but you need to like and subscribe this video right here, down below. It's right down there. It's just waiting. It's waiting for you down there, okay? And make sure you watch these videos over here too. You'll be doing me a big favor. I'm gonna be in handcuffs pretty soon. All right, thanks for watching.